All right. Welcome to the next 20th anniversary stream. My name is Pavel Bourgeois, and I'm joined by a special guest, Seb McBride, or Sebastian McBride. You are the senior level designer here at CD Projekt Red, and you are a level designer on Thronebreaker, The Witcher Tales. This is what we're talking about today about. So we're going back in time all the way to October 23rd, 2018. That's been quite some time. And we're going to be going through Mahakam, so we can actually show the game in the background because we are going to see Bruver Hoog. And what we'll be talking about how the whole production of this beast of a game went on, and and how the story looks from your perspective, because you were working in the trenches on the game. And I feel like it's one of our titles which maybe didn't get as much appreciation as it should, because it's such a good game, but it has the card game gameplay. And we were just talking before we started the stream that even without Gwent within the game, it's such a good narrative-driven story.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it definitely elements of what were really strong at the studio is definitely narrative.
Yeah.
And I think this game has it in spades. I mean, like you said, we were talking about it. Like, you take some of these characters and some of these storylines in this game, and I think it can stand toe to toe with anything like The Witcher 3, Witcher 2, Witcher 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool to be here, man. It's we were talking stream that I actually wanted to do Mahakam because every time we show this game off, it's always Lyria, and as much as I love seeing Lyria, I thought this would be a bit different.
Yeah,
so.
Actually, we can show the game right now because we're already moving through the map. We have Sebastian with us, who is actually playing the game. So me and you can pretty much discuss everything that we're seeing.
For sure.
So you were a level designer working on this project. Mm-hmm. What does a level designer do for those who are like maybe not familiar of what your job is?
So a level designer, it kind of depends on the studio. I've worked on a bunch of different studios.
Are they tame?
I'm apparently broken. Yeah, depending on the studio, level designer kind of does multiple different things. But what I'd say is, in a traditional sense, they kind of facilitate gameplay and a gameplay experience to a player within a location.
Okay. So when we started working on this was a time where we're also working on the multiplayer version of Gwent, which we still are working on. Mm-hmm. And there was an idea to have like the single player experience of a game that is narrative driven, but has also battles done with Gwent cards. Mm-hmm. So what was the first time you heard about the project?
So I was actually, I'd finished working at a previous studio, and I was kind of looking around and saw the CDPR kind of job offer, and I was like, Gwent, okay, I know that from that was the Witcher 3, but they want a level designer for like the standalone single player. Mm-hmm. I was like, I have no idea what you would be doing for that. Like how do you tie that in? What does a card game need a level designer with? I applied, and I did a bit of a test. Mm-hmm. And obviously the people that were in charge back then, they clearly liked what I did, so I got the job. And then when I got here, I was like, okay, so this is what we're doing.
Exactly.
Like, okay, right on. That's pretty dope. So
really cool. Yeah, we're right now with Bruver and with Meve. Meve is of course the main character of the whole thing. This takes part before the second of Guardian Invasion, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. We're pretty much going through her story before she meets Geralt of Rivia. So there is for those of you who didn't play it, I won't spoil anything, but. I did mention that name for a reason, so it has a reason like going with it, so I highly encourage you to get the game. You said we normally always do Lyria. It was just kind of the first map, it's the tutorial map, but here we're in Mahakam, so yeah. And speaking of story-driven, we have these encounters where actually the characters get to talk, and also there is a narrator who's telling the whole story of the game itself.
Yeah, I think this narrator, I don't know, there's just something about him, like with obviously him telling the story.
Yeah.
Anyone that's played the game, you know, that it starts off in a tavern and he's recalling a tale of Meve. You know, it's really cool. And I mean, it's a really small thing, but I've watched a couple of streams where people bring this up with the text on the screen, how it kind of comes in as the characters are talking.
Exactly.
I think it's like a really small little detail, which, you know, we care a lot about at this studio. And it just kind of makes the experience more rather than just kind of passing the text as it comes on.
Yeah, of course you can. If you click the text will go out, all of it, but it's actually good to have it in a sense that, you know, it's appearing once the characters are talking, just for the sake of, you know, you not reading on the whole story and just waiting for the characters to finish. And what I also liked is when we're developing this, there was an idea to actually have the lips of the characters move. Yeah. Although, like, everything here is, you know, is pretty much drawn by hand and then animated. So it was really cool to have these whole storyboards animated, to have them actually have lip sync, which is not something that you see in these type of games, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's I'm just kind of nostalgia coming back to when I first saw this in the editor about kind of how these are set up and like the rigging on which is basically like a 2.5D image. Yeah. And it's really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love, because in the game you have 5 maps, like you said, 5 1/4, something around that, and all of them are hand drawn, and then there were little like animations added to them, and also points of interest throughout the whole map. And I feel like this really immersed the player into the game itself, and also the characters here are very, very well written, and also they have their own personalities, and based off like what's happening within the game and based off of your decisions, they might decide to leave you, they might decide to stay, and, you know, these are kind of based on the choices that you make throughout the game, which is something that, you know, made it really a CDPR experience. Like, choices and consequences is something that we're known for. So it was really cool to have it. And when we were also like doing this, I was reminiscing that I think in 2017, I got the opportunity to go to Gamescom and actually showcase on the business booth behind closed doors, like the first presentations for Thronebreaker. And I remember people going out of like this small cinema that we had in the booth saying like, this is such a cool like experience, such a well story-driven thing.
I think it's, you know, there are obviously games that are kind of similar to this, for sure. But I think this one kind of stands alone just with how it looks, and obviously it's from our company. Yeah. It's kind of stands out, but also, you know, like I said before, the characters, some of the story, you know, has very much, you know, can stand shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. But yeah, the maps. I mean, like I said, there's 5. We'll call it 5. There's 5 maps, and I think for me as an LD when I first started on this project, it was a little daunting, because like, oh yeah, you'll be making all these locations, or helping to make these locations, and then I got a list, obviously saw the story, pitch, and where the locations were. I was like, holy crap, you know, this is like, these are like big places in the Witcher universe where, you know, people have never seen these before. Yeah. Like, I take Mahakam for example. There's a little story for you. Yeah. There was a moment where it was like super quiet in the office. We were all working, and somebody, I think, had their headphones on, but it was like super loud. Yeah. And it was one of the dwarf cards. It's like, Mahakam wasn't built in a day. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And it was like super loud, and everyone kind of noticed it, and it's like, no, it wasn't, but I did help build it. And I kind of got a chuckle out of it. But after the project finished, we kind of all got like I wouldn't say a certificate, it was like a letter. I've got it framed at home. It's got like an embossed, like a seal, wax seal embossed thing on it. But it was Matty, our old game director. He kind of done like a little paragraph of like, you know, cheers for doing this, so on and so forth. And that was kind of on mine, as like, yeah, well, Mahakam wasn't built in a day, but we did help to build it.
Nice. Yeah, Mateusz Tomaszkiewicz. It's nice that you mentioned his name, because he was the game director behind the project. I forgot to mention one thing in the beginning of the stream. If you have any questions for me or for Seb, probably more for him than for me, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll be getting to those probably closer to the end of the stream. Okay, so we learned about like your beginnings. When it comes to Mahakam, which we're currently going to be exploring, what do you remember from this map? Like, what was the thing that kind of stuck to your mind when you began like development on it?
Yeah, I remember this one. This was kind of won't say an awkward one to make. Obviously, we knew that we wanted to. Obviously, Mahakam is in the mountains for the most part. It's the land of the dwarves, and it was like the way we were building the previous maps. There was I'd set kind of the distances between our POIs, points of interest.
Yeah.
And kind of the distances and way up like the main quest where they go and the side quests and where they go and how far it is. I take rough estimates of like, take this example of this conversation would take X amount of time.
Yeah.
So I get a rough estimate of how long the player's going to be sat here listening to this, or in like gameplay sequences with the cards, and kind of measure out roughly like, okay, this feels like a pretty good length of kind of traveling on the levels, and then I'd go in and kind of like in the level design discipline, we do what's called block out, or grey boxing, white boxing, kind of all interchangeable terms, and it basically means like a really basic fundamental layout of a location, and depending on the studio and the game you're working on, that can differ quite a lot. Blocking out on this project was super weird because it was using really, really rough 2D assets.
Yeah.
Like all our trees, we'd have like a patch of trees, but it would be like flat and you just print it on and then print it around. It looks horrible, right? But that wasn't the point. It's not necessarily meant to look the best at that moment in time. And like some of the, so like we obviously Lyria, it's like countryside, it's trees, it's a very wooded area, I guess, farmland. And the second map, we saying the names, I guess? We can say the names of the
of course.
Yeah, so Eden would be the second one, Mahakam's the third one.
Yeah.
Like you have a few trees here and there, but a lot of this, I mean, you can see on the screen, it's snow.
Yeah.
A lot of snow and a lot of rocks. And I remember kind of looking at it as, okay, I'm going to place like I just use boxes for like, all right, this is where this quest will start, this is where this quest will start. And then it was kind of looking at it, and it was like I had a few temporary mounting pieces.
Yeah.
And these were just like drawings that were imported into our editor. And it's like, how do I make something even remotely interesting with this? You know, it was super hard because we wanted to, this is the scale, we play with the scale a lot in this game. Meve's a representation of her army, not just her.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was like super hard. I was like, okay, well, we're going to have a mountain range, but then, all right, well, the frozen lake would be kind of cool. So we're kind of seeing the frozen lake. So for the longest time, that was just a blue smudge on the map. And then, we had these little NPCs that we added.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a testament to our kind of art team and our VFX team with just the hand-drawn art style of this game is phenomenal. Really cool. I think it has a timeless quality to it, for sure.
Yeah, we were just talking about before we started the stream that the game still, when we look at it, it holds up. Like the visuals for it. I know it's 2018, like October, so it's almost end of 2018. So it's not that like long ago, but I feel like if we play this in the next, I don't know, 10, 15 years, I think it still would look really good because it has this distinctive like look to it. Plus everything being hand-drawn just makes it look timeless and incredible. Yeah. But yeah, so you as a level designer, so you also kind of affect the pacing of the game, right? So in terms of like what happens when, and there are some cool places like in the story when you're going through the map that things kind of surprise you, and I really like that in the first map in the beginning of the tutorial is like when you get to something, like the map starts moving and then you get like an encounter, and some of them are ones that you kind of direct by actually going into something and then it starts, or it just happens like out of nowhere and you get the element of surprise. So that is also something that you're able to kind of...
Yeah, it's kind of a collaboration, definitely, with like the narrative team in this game, in this development. It was very much kind of me, Matty, and a few others kind of working on that. But yeah, it was very different. It's kind of the most bespoke game I've ever made. Yeah. Because it kind of veered so far from how you normally do things, normally in inverted brackets, comments, I guess. It was like I wouldn't say we were making up. There's educated kind of decisions being made here, but there was like, well, how do we do this? How do we make this interesting? Like I said before, the pacing of this, the distance between objectives, and how do you get that sense of wonder, especially with Mahakam, because like I said, it is a mountain range, you know. So we had to really play with a bunch of stuff. Scale, for example, was kind of a big one. But again, Meve is still a representation. So that balancing that was tricky. But yeah, we throw like stuff in, like obviously, like you said, the battles and the ambushes and stuff.
And also the puzzles. We just had a puzzle in which we got one of the rune stones.
The puzzles, I got a good story about that. So there was a game designer called David who I used to work with on this project, and he was a really good game designer. Way more so than me in regards to the card elements. And I remember a lot of the puzzle ideas, I think it was just me and him sat there and me trying to get as many pop culture references into the game as humanly possible.
Good.
Like I think in Eden there's a puzzle where there's like rot fiends, I think it is, that are moving across the board. And that just came from the Night of the Living Dead. I was like, we gotta get a reference in there with Night of the Living Dead. So there was a lot of that.
We love Easter eggs here. That's true.
Yeah, of course. We're going to draw influence from all that. But it was a case of like we'd bounce ideas back and forward, and I was like, okay, this would be really cool from this thematic element, and then he'd go away and go, oh, well, we could do that from this game design perspective and that. So that was like super fun. It was just literally bouncing ideas off each other.
Nice.
Not necessarily a level design perspective, although I guess it would tie into the level design because I had to design the locations to match the idea. And obviously at the end of this map, we do have a really good. That one I'll keep secret. I don't want to. People who've played it will know what I'm talking about with the tavern. But there's one there that's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, Easter eggs for sure is something that we love adding to the game itself. But yeah, I also enjoyed this one because actually having something that is totally about dwarves and Bruverhoog being the ruler of Mahakam and kind of finding him for the first time, and kind of Meve encountering, also having like Gabor on her side, which is like another dwarf, and kind of explains a lot of things to her in terms of the story. But yeah, this was also one that I remembered, and it was also one of the maps which had a very distinctive look to it, because I think with each map something was totally different. Like you said, the mountains, the snow kind of really gave you the feeling of Mahakam.
Yeah, it was interesting when we were we had obviously in production we have concept artists to kind of draw just ideas out, kind of thematic ideas. So in Mahakam you'll see kind of the ice changes color and the rocks change color depending on where you are. But I remember seeing concepts of like, well, we've never seen Mahakam, so like, is it just regular ice? Is it green? Is that emerald green ice? And there was a lot of different concepts for that. Eventually we kind of settled on more reasonable, this isn't necessarily high fantasy, this is a grounded world. So
high fantasy doesn't really work for Gwen also, so I can imagine that for us in this world, I think it's a lot more grayish, darkish than kind of being chivalrous and knights, and we leave that for Tucson and those locations. Like, well, not for Mahakam. So when it comes to you and the process of where you go in on a project, so first the story was made, if I remember correctly, right? So we had an outline for the story. Then we start working on the visuals, and then that is where you kind of start planning things out. But like you said, it's kind of rough, kind of you create it from kind of scratch, and then you kind of, based on where the points of interest are, when their encounters are, you're kind of trying to see how the player pretty much progresses through the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to it. Like I said, this was kind of the most bespoke game I think I've ever worked, the most different game I've ever worked on. I mean, when I first started, there was a version of Lyria, but it was like really, really small. If anyone that's played the game remembers Lyria, it was maybe a quarter of the first section before you even meet Gascon. Like, that's kind of how big it was. And I remember getting on the project and quickly realizing that, all right, we're going to make something pretty epic here. So, we need to justify the budget, so to speak. So it got a lot bigger, a lot quickly. I remember
the scope grew like very quickly.
I remember doing initial kind of layouts of like Lyria was 4 times as big, you know.
Yeah.
But it was like, this is a drag. This is actually too big. But yeah, so like the maps obviously were decided on where we were going to go. And yeah, so it's a case of like kind of doing the layouts, requesting assets for the art team to start making. The way we kind of did it was, say, I don't know, we take a main quest location, and there'd be ideas kind of thrown around with our artists, and I'm from a level designer, this kills me to admit, but I used to do little post-it notes with like the most horrific, I think the village should kind of look like this, right? Just really, really horrible sketches. And I give it to Sergey, one of our artists, and it's like, I think it should be something like this.
Enjoy.
And he'd look at it and just put his head in his hands and, what is this? I was like, let me explain how this works. And this is why I kind of needed to do this thing and this thing. But yeah, I don't think I've got any of those post-it notes anymore, but they were pretty rough. So yeah, that was kind of, the location will get drawn out by an artist, like quite rough. And then the way our world, or the way the world is set up, or the levels are set up in this game, is we would kind of cut out. So if you're like an image and you would cut out different sections of it. When we were early in development, we wanted this kind of isometric feeling, but we also didn't want it to be flat.
Yeah.
So it had to look tangible in a real place. So we actually, the way we did it was we'd lift the assets up and then tilt them like 45 degrees to get the perspective, which means that everything kind of had to be drawn.
Yeah, it makes it
and
pop
then
out.
rotated. But then we'd place them in, and if you actually look at the maps from like a horizontal plane, everything's kind of stacked up like that. It's the weirdest thing to see.
Yeah.
And then we kind of fake it with collision. So when Meve kind of walks behind things, we wanted that sense of depth with a lot of the locations, like trees and stuff. You kind of walk behind all them, so you get this. It doesn't feel flat. So we cut the locations out. I'd start placing them, and it just kind of built layers and layers and layers of kind of adding to different locations and working with and to call out one environment artist who I work very closely with, a woman called Amelia. She actually started at the company and wasn't sure whether she wanted to be a level designer or an artist. And I kind of looked, I was like, you're really good at the art, and you should do the art.
you should do that,
And yeah, we worked pretty close on that. And yeah, I'd kind of go through, do the blockouts, and she'd kind of go through and kind of clean up behind me. But yeah, so we do like layouts, and then the collision stuff I mentioned, that was kind of on me, which isn't necessarily a level design task, but
it makes kind of sense, right?
Yeah, I was the only level designer on this, so I was like, all right, I'll handle that. Loot was another one. I went through and did all the loot pass, requesting assets. Like we have castles that are burning, so I had to, all right, we've got a burning castle. What does that mean? I have to put requests in for all the different teams and that. So yeah, depending on the project.
There's like a little bit of loot sometimes like hidden, and it also is in a way, like you mentioned, collision and stuff like that. There are places in which if you take Meve and you can actually get into like a very specific like nook and cranny type of space where you're able, if you get there, you're able to get some really cool treasure or something that you need. So that was also something that I remember doing. It brought a lot of fun because I did not expect it from a game which is pretty much isometric view and stuff like that.
I forget the idea where that came from, but yeah, the whole idea was there's a story I'll tell later, but the idea of seeing something and, okay, how do I get there? Right? That's kind of a general thing that we do in level design anyway, but the idea of kind of playing with it in regards to you can walk behind things, that actually came from, I think, Sonic 1. It was like the fake walls in Sonic 1. Where that idea kind of came from. So yeah, we played with that. I think just one off the top of my head, in Lyria there's a castle and you see a treasure chest, but you have to kind of walk, you have to find the path behind the castle to get there, and it's kind of hidden away. So yeah, there was like, even though it was relatively, I wouldn't say simple, but like Meve just walks around in the world, right? So we treat it differently. But that was kind of, we got to play a bit with the location to keep it interesting for the player.
Yeah, like you said, she represents the whole army, and the army is kind of built out of Gwent cards, but the Gwent cards are also the characters that you meet throughout your journey. So based off of that, they join you. And also, if you ever, when you're roaming the map, you can always go to a place where you have pretty much your whole like there's a tavern, there is like the Queen's tent, like you have your like
camp,
tent
right?
camp exactly like set up. Where you can also go into a deck builder and you can change out stuff. You can change out also like weapons for Meve, which was really cool, which would influence the play style of how you carry out and play out the games here. So yeah, I remember there was a lot of like interesting little mechanics here and there that kind of just added to the whole experience of the game. And I also remember when you were mentioning Collision, that in very early stages of the game, like when we had like builds just for us to play and just to kind of see it, like we got the like no collision version where you can just walk around the whole map and like no collision, so you can walk on water, you can walk on mountains, you can go everywhere. It's always, for me, these are really cool because you can go to places that, for example, like at the end of the map, so you're like, what the hell, or where am I supposed to go now? But you know, it's really cool to kind of see how the world is built from the perspective of like having the possibility to like free roam anywhere you want, right?
Yeah, you know, you're absolutely right. Obviously when we make games, optimization is kind of a big thing for us. So with Thronebreaker, you only ever see exactly what I want you to see on the map. So if you ever like on a road and something and you can't see anything past a certain point, that's where everything ends. You just have flat texture past that.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's like, again, it's kind of a weird kind of dev thing. Like, you don't see what's past there, so it's all a bit of a facade.
I think it is kind of built there for the player to experience it in a way that it is supposed to be experienced, but of course, it's much different if you don't have the isometric view where you are controlling your character and you're able to look like, you know, wherever you want, go wherever you want. That's kind of the open world of the thing. But here I think for the story purposes, like it had to be a little bit like linear, but we also, there were parts where we gave, you know, the player kind of options, like you said, like going behind that castle to get some loot, or going and maybe doing like a side quest before you progress into the main quest of the game.
Yeah, the original kind of, as I mentioned before, the original kind of idea of Lyria was very just open. You could kind of walk wherever you want. And that was kind of, it was fine, but with the story that we wanted to tell, it was a very focused story about Meve and her building this guerrilla army. I think we felt that the levels should kind of mirror that. You should be on a journey forward rather than kind of wandering around and getting lost. Also, there's like design considerations when you do games of this sort. It's actually something we looked at very early on. We played obviously The Witcher 3, but we actually moved the camera up to an isometric perspective and looked at The Witcher 3 in the same kind of
nice.
angle. Yeah,
that's an interesting
to kind of
experiment.
get a feel of how The Witcher 3 would look if you were to do
isometric view.
And it's not designed to look that way, right? It looks completely different.
Looks like a drone is just flying over.
It's a
like,
little
what?
weird. When you're working in like a 3D space with like third-person camera, you have landmarks to help orientation, buildings and whatnot. So you can always kind of you can see to the horizon and you go, okay, I want to go there.
Yeah.
With an isometric camera, you can't do that, you know, unless you were to have an option where you pull the camera all the way out.
It's just up, down, left, right,
yeah.
right? You're pretty much, that's how you operate.
So there's design considerations you have to account for when you make something like this. I remember the idea that I came up with. It's not necessarily the most original idea, but I remember watching a talk on phone screens, or like tablet screens, and how icons are only ever placed in the corners of screens. It's easier to touch an icon on a tablet or whatever in the corner. It's like a subconscious thing, I believe. And that gave me the idea for how I would breadcrumb players through the world. So on the screen, you will always potentially see something on either corner.
Yeah.
And that would be your kind of like, it's like a rope with knots in, where you'd always kind of pull yourself forward. So that's kind of a choice that we made.
Kind of gives you a way of orientation, right?
Exactly.
Within the world.
Exactly.
So it's like a compass, but just pretty much around it. Yeah, I feel like whenever something is being designed in isometric, it pretty much is always like you have this frame around the map itself, but it's kind of out of the way, but it pretty much tells you like which way you should be progressing through.
And we did have more of a, definitely in parts, in sections of each location, there are bits where, okay, you can go and walk around, right? They're specifically designed for that. Okay, I want a bit of exploration, I want to get a little bit lost. But you following the brick road, if you always come back to the brick road, then it would lead you to the next main quest location, I guess. Did we miss Eudora yet? Did we get to Eudora?
I don't think so. I don't think we missed that.
That was a big one for me the first time. Kind of we saw a female dwarf in the.
Oh yeah, I think, but it was in the story. You mean the story piece?
Yeah, it's in
when
like
all the dwarves are standing and there's one female dwarf.
No, she's actually a character.
Oh, she's actually a character. So I don't think she was there yet.
Zoltan's missus, right?
Yes. And I remember someone was even petitioning for us to have like female dwarves in the game, and I remember there was one point in which we got it like added it to Gwent, the Witcher card game, so the multiplayer version of Gwent, where we had like a female dwarf, and people were like, yeah, finally, because it is something that was kind of mentioned throughout the story, but no one ever saw them like depicted within the game, so kind of how they would look like. So
I think she's got a bigger beard than me in the game.
Yeah, which is really, really cool. So we just finished a battle with Scoia'tael. I love this pose of Meve. Like she's a very like badass.
Ryla, is it?
Yeah. And Ryla decided to move away from us.
As you mentioned though, like this was a cool thing with this game was, again, very much a conscious decision of you only have one save file.
Yeah.
So you make
whatever
choices,
decision you make,
and there are consequences potentially hours down the line. Like Ike, I believe, in the first map, you can first meet him, and if a decision has been made at the beginning of that map, then he's like,
says, "See ya."
"Hi, bye."
Yeah. I hated that because when I was playing the game myself, I always wanted everybody to stay with me. I didn't want anyone to go away. But then I kind of saw that, even if I chose something different, there would be almost like no way to make everybody happy in a sense that everybody would stay. But yeah, since we were nice to Scoia'tael, following Ryla, she said, "See ya," because she's anti-Scoia'tael, so it makes a lot of sense. And then
here's an example of the walking behind objects.
Yeah.
Little Easter egg here. That bridge actually is 2 different bridges, just to break the illusion.
Okay.
But yeah, you walk under, and then when you walk past it actually flips for a flat version, so you can walk over the top.
That's so cool.
It's like a little technique that we used.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, the world building here is really cool. The characters are amazing, so yeah, 10 out of 10. Yeah, the problem that I also have is like whenever you stream this game and when you talk about it, like you are kind of also trying to read in on the story, because like we said numerous times throughout the stream, like the narrative is so strong that you get very easily immersed into the world, and not only you get to read, but also you have the storyteller like telling you the story, and then voiceover for the characters, and then the gameplay fits very well into it. So yeah, I feel like it's a nice combination of everything.
Yeah, there she is.
Yeah.
No, it was this to me. I love this, the way we presented this. Like you have a single image there, but with the narrator explaining it, like in my head, I'm imagining. I guess it's how comics work to some degree.
Yeah.
You can imagine how that conversation can go just on that single image.
Yeah. Yeah. Also the accents here, like kudos to Boris who does our English adaptation. Like he always keeps in mind that the character is based on the race and also gender and everything, where they are placed within the world itself. Like it reflects the way that they speak and the dialect that they use. Which for me, like I have a background in English philology, so for me it's kind of like, it's these little things, these little intricacies when it comes to the dialects and how everybody speaks. It's just so good. It's so good.
I think I've said this before on another stream, that I think it was just after I started, there was like dialogue being written for Meve, and it was where I'm from in England, kind of the northwest. Nobody really says nothing, or you can say nothing, but the slang for it would be nout.
Nout, okay.
And I remember Meve, they'd wrote the dialogue for Meve, and she kept saying nothing.
Yeah.
And I actually talked to Matti Tomaskevich and Boris. There was a meeting about it. I was like, look, you know, she's regal, of course, and she knows how to speak, but there is an element of an accent there, or the way she would speak, where she would probably say "nout." So yeah, I got that in. I was like, that was kind of cool. Again, attention to detail of, you know, that's just a small little quirk, but you know, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. And there you have Gascon, you know, taking something.
I love this guy.
Of course, yeah. Gascon is amazing.
He's so
Gascon is freaking amazing, and a lot of people really enjoyed him as a character because, yeah, there was a lot of fan art done for him, and there was a lot of people saying like, oh, Team Gascon all the way, because yeah, based on the story, if you need to decide like who you want to kind of be your advisor, and also what happens to them later on. But yeah, Gascon, for sure, awesome. And we have one of the puzzles here, awesome character. I'll check if we have any questions for you, because that's going to be an interesting one.
I love these puzzles that like, you look at this, it's like, well, how inventive can you get with a card game?
Yeah.
And we basically make a traversal puzzle from a card game. I think that's like incredibly, you know, hats off to the designers that did this one.
Yeah, there's a question, like a general one by Korikara, who's a member of our community, so shout out to you. Any chance of more Thronebreaker elements, like 1 or 2 battlefields coming to Gwent, the Rivia one specifically? That's a good question, because we have the Battle of the Aruga Bridge, which we added. I think we also have one of these like Mahakam ones, which are also, but I think there's more than that. I think there is Lyria, but Rivia we never added. So maybe it is something that you could consider in the future. Yeah, there's some like versions also, like the bridge one. I think has a couple versions to it. This is a good one by Ven Fanic. Any weird bugs that appeared during the development?
Any weird bugs? Yeah. So there was. Yeah, there's quite a few. Not as many as you'd think. Well, I mean, there were a lot of bugs. It's game development. I'm trying to think. Yeah, definitely. I mean, with the map, I guess I wouldn't say it's a bug, but we did realize that. So all the individual grass pieces that are in Lyria and Eden and Rivia, I guess, and Angren for that matter. No, we got grass in all the maps. But there was something where, with the way our structure was set up in the editor, I won't go too much into the technical detail, but we had basically every grass piece was an individual object. And what had happened was, with the way our photo structure was set up, I don't know, we'd copied, somebody had copied the grass multiple times. So like you'd click on a piece of grass and delete it, and then there'd be one more, and you click on that, delete it, and then delete it and delete it. And our art director at the time kind of went through and just looked at us, what have you guys done? Like the performance was pretty rough. Yeah, that was a funny bug, I guess, but it wasn't funny at the time. It's like, oh god.
But there are a couple of bugs, and also like something that I also wanted to ask you kind of is the iterative process of the whole thing, because whenever you're creating something, people are testing it, they're replaying it multiple times, and then things go back to you, and then you're kind of addressing some of the issues, but also like working on feedback. Like for a level designer, how much feedback is happening, how constant it is until you get to like the final version of what you want.
Yeah, there was a lot of feedback. If I can remember correctly, there's a bunch of feedback. I mean, I know definitely Rivia was restarted at least once. Like a half of that map was made, and like I just scrapped it. I was like, based on feedback, I was like, this is not good. So we need to remake it. The middle of Eden, for those that played it, the middle of Eden is the forest section that you go through, where you meet the Skytone, they ambush you. That was redone a bunch of times. Originally it was like really, really small, and it was like kind of me concerned about, we've got a big game here, I need to cut some things back, and it just, after a while with a bit of feedback, it's like, no, we need to go in with, this should feel like a forest. So yeah, that got maybe, I don't know, I won't say 4 times as big, but it was a big increase.
It grew.
Yeah. Mahakam didn't really change that much, to be fair. I think the end of it changed. Oh no, sorry. The last third of it, I guess, changed a little bit. But the general idea and the flow of this and how it was kind of framed wasn't changed too much. The idea actually with Mahakam was, for the first third, you're going upwards. You're always going upwards, and that was like a subconscious thing of you're climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get to the middle section, which is more like Greenland kind of area. Not the place, but like just more grass. So that was kind of you coming into a valley, so all of that section's going down, and then the final climb is going back up again. So it was, it wasn't just me drawing lines on the place. There was, thought, even just with the way your direction you're running,
Yeah, nice, really cool. Do you remember, on average, how long it took to create puzzles in Thronebreaker? Like, I know it was also a long process, and I know there were like puzzles that changed a lot based off what was happening within the development, and also you mentioned David, he was mainly responsible for them. But I remember we had all the designers that worked on multiplayer version of Gwen and also still work on Gwen that had their input in terms of like gameplay ability of the whole thing. And do you remember how long it took to do the puzzles?
I think it depended on the puzzle. To be fair,
there were some that had like multiple iterations because they were either too hard, too complicated, maybe too easy sometimes. And but there is a mode in the game, of course, that you can skip the puzzles. So it would pretty much make them a lot easier that when you just escape out of the game, you're just able to enjoy the story itself. Like you don't need to be doing the battles themselves. So that
it was definitely. I mean, our systems, I believe, were quite flexible. I didn't really have too much hands in, apart from coming up with the ideas for the puzzles, but the implementation of them, not so much. But again, I'd say like depending on, like the one we saw with Gascon with the moving through, and it's like the navigation puzzle.
Yeah.
I would presume that would take longer than like a relatively simple puzzle battle, let's say.
Okay, someone by the name of Captain Harlock 78. I dig the hand-drawn style. It looks stellar. Congrats. What was the challenge you had to deal with choosing the time-consuming style? So what's kind of the bane of having everything hand-drawn within? I love the vistas, by the way.
Yeah, that was something I added in, just because that piece actually on the left, sorry, on the right with this kind of the houses.
Yeah.
I was playtesting this, and obviously no clip mode, no collision, and I kept coming back to here, and I was like, oh, that's just like a really good shot. And we had an ability to basically pull the camera out.
Yeah.
And it was just like a small thing of like that looks really cool. So let's do stuff like that. But in regards to what took the longest time, I guess, is that what he asked?
Kind of like what's the bane of having everything drawn in hand? Like, well, we talk about it as being something cool, awesome, but wasn't it hard to get like multiple iterations of, changing the artistic style, or maybe just, I don't know, going back and reiterating how everything is supposed to look? Was there anything
it would not
prove the challenge?
Not from me personally, but I know the environment artists, our illustrators, Mahakam especially. Because a lot of the other locations, it was relatively straightforward. The terrain was like grass or roads, or any rocks with like buildings. Like a castle would be on some rocks, so you'd have a little bit of the rock would actually be drawn into the floor, because it's a 2D. Mahakam is all mountain.
Yeah. And
the way we kind of give the place depth is you walk behind a few assets to give the impression that there is depth. But a lot of Mahakam is hand-drawn. The actual terrain is hand-drawn. And I know that took the artist a long time. Yeah. And actually, when you remove all the like secondary assets on top of that, it's a lot of painting snow and painting rocks.
Oh man!
And that took them a long time to do.
Yeah, I can't imagine, because like having that hand drawn just takes a lot of time, and the maps are quite big. So
yes, they are.
That's a lot of work on the environmental artists.
I felt their pain, but I wasn't making the map smaller.
Yeah. Nice. Question for you, as a level designer, apart from Thronebreaker, of course. What is your feel about fast travel in games? what's your opinion about fast travel? Are you a fast travel person? I know people who
I know
hate
Miles
fast
is
travel. Totally
Miles has
hate
started this, right? The ironic thing behind this. So obviously, I worked on Thronebreaker, and I did add the fast travel points into Thronebreaker.
Okay.
I didn't make the system, but the places where you fast travel, I think I did those. I obviously worked on a little game called Cyberpunk 2077.
Mm-hmm.
Miles is obviously a colleague of mine.
Mm-hmm.
We're both senior level designers.
Yes.
And I think he came up with a joke of like every time a gamer fast travels in a level in a world, a level designer dies. The ironic thing about this is I was the one that added all the fast travel points in Cyberpunk.
So they actually contributed to the cause.
I was thinking about this actually a couple of days ago. Does that kind of make me an accessory to murder by doing this?
Yeah, but some people just feel that it eliminates the immersion and actually the work that the level designers put into actually for the player progressing and exploring the world. Like I know people who like, Geralt on a horse is okay, but I know people who like Geralt without a horse, just walking through the world, like Witcher 3. That's how they roll. Like no fast travel, only going from point A to point B. Either on horse or on foot, and that's the way they roll, and that's what they do for like majority of the games that they play. Yeah,
I think it's definitely a tricky one, right? I think it's a multi-layered question/problem, because you do have a lot of people who, are just enjoying it for the story, and you can't discount that, right? If they want to just continue the story, then there's. I guess that's fine to some degree. I don't think there's a catch-all solution to it. It's in a perfect world, it would be how do we make the world more interesting where players don't feel they need to fast travel as much. But that's an incredibly deep topic and it's quite a hard problem to solve. I think go and watch Miles' stream. I think he brings up this one and when he did the Blood and Wine stream. So I'll kind of default to his points on that.
His points on it. Okay.
But it's very hard.
Yeah. There was also a question that we kind of addressed by Cyan. What was the reasoning of not having saves in this game? I don't want to replay the entire game to choose another choice. I think that was the idea, right? Choices and consequences. Like whatever decision that you make within the game, you are faced with the consequences immediately. And then when you replay the game once again, you can play it in a different way and kind of see if you get a different outcome. I feel like with the game being the way it is, it has this replayability value, which we also wanted to have it like in the game, so you can actually go and choose different things and make different decisions and decide how your Meve is going to be, like what type of ruler she is. And based off of that, it has its different consequences.
Yeah, I think it definitely... there are choice and consequence. If the consequence doesn't actually have any meaningful outcome, then you don't really care, whereas if you tie that in with gameplay cards or characters, where you make the wrong decision and you have to deal with that, that's a meaningful consequence, and it makes you think about, as a player, hopefully it makes you think about the choices you're making of like, do I want to be the worst ruler ever, or do I want to be the best ruler, or do I want to be the ruler that I think Meve would have been, and I get it, a person wants to kind of see all the different endings, or different, not endings, but the different consequences. You could play it again, for sure, it's a long game, or there are websites online, that you can go and watch on YouTube, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. For the person who asked the question, if I can have the camera, like, you do not get replays in real life. Like, you make your decisions, you make your choices, and then it's done. Like, there is no replays in real life. There is no replays here, no saves that you can go back to and cheat. In life, if you make a decision and someone leaves or something happens, well, you don't get to go back and, go back, like rewind, maybe I can do it again. No,
life's not a video game, Pavel.
Yeah. I know.
Maybe it is.
But the immersion, that's what we do it for. Like if you're immersed into something, then you think twice. I love those moments, and I had this when I played Witcher 3 and the previous Witcher games, is I love the moment where I knew that I need to stop and think of a choice that I make. And based off of that, I knew that something was going to happen, because the game kind of based on the music, the mood, like the pacing, you kind of see that something is coming and you don't know like what's going to happen. But then I will quote the famous like Baron quest here. Like for that one, I felt like whatever I do, the ending would be bad, and it was bad. And then I was like, and then it like shook me really inside. So I was like, okay, this, whoever came up with this idea, it's like 10 out of 10. It's just, it really impacts you.
The choice of only having one save, I think, was, I'm not going to blame it on one person, but it was very much harkened back to a lot of the games that they played back in the early 90s. A lot of the old PC kind of role-playing games were, that was the thing. You kind of had to live with those consequences. So I think that was kind of more of a nudge towards that, I'd say. Yeah.
All right, I got a question from Devil Driven, and funny thing, we were talking about Devil Driven just before we started the stream, that it was awesome to actually meet you in person for the first time when you were in Warsaw, and we had the celebrations of the 20th anniversary. We had a party here in Warsaw. So yeah, we just said that you and your significant other, awesome people, love you to bits, and it was actually good to finally meet you in person. So question for us, what would be your dream protagonist if you could make Thronebreaker 2? I would say Jorvet. Jorvet. There was, I will spoil a little bit. There was some idea to have Jorvet Breaker. I heard some rumors.
We're going there with that. All right, okay. All right.
I know it's not going to happen. Yeah. I know it's not going to happen because we said like we're not going to do any more Witcher Tale games. But I know there were some ideas for a Jorvet Breaker.
There was. There was. To the point where I just started playing Witcher 2 again. Just kind of research. There was a bunch of ideas actually. I guess. Yeah. I'll throw these out because they're never going to get done. But the ideas that we kind of bounced around, and these weren't anything other than just ideas. Yeah. Like we chat amongst ourselves. The idea of monsters. I think the idea was to potentially have a lady who'd lost her husband but made a deal with Gaunter Dim as a revenge tale, and she would then gain the ability to control monsters. So that was an idea that was floated around. The one I really like the most, I think I'd go with this one, would be, it was between a bunch of us, of the idea that the Nilfgaard campaign, you would play the Nilfgaard campaign, but the first level of that, or the first location of that, you'd be playing as a Skellige warrior.
Ooh.
And the idea, I mean, this is just us talking in the studio, was that you would play the first level as a Skellige warrior, but the whole marketing would be, this is the Skellige campaign, and then it'd be at the end of the first level, it'd be like, surprise, you pull the mask off, actually I'm a Nilfgaarding spy. So that was a kind of an idea that we were throwing around, as well. That was kind of pretty cool. If I could pick anybody in the Witcher universe to do a Thronebreaker 2, Dandelion.
Dandelion, okay.
Yeah, I'd do a Dandelion. Okay. That'd be his just tales and the way he comes up with half these
that's true. It would be an interesting one to actually like have his full story go through, and kind of like maybe early days for Dandelion would be really cool before he met Geralt, before he was part of the whole Hansa.
How he Stopes getting into all these problems.
Yeah, and of course getting into the problems and stuff like that. Yeah. We have the voice of the dragon, which is incredible. Keltulis, of course. For those of you that play multiplayer Gwent, you will know who that is. Moving on, by V. Uridine, what was the thought behind doing this faraway view style? So sorry, I don't know the technical term, but just having the
isometric.
Yes, kind of just the camera panning out and kind of showing more of the map. I think it's just to show how good everything looks.
Yeah, I think so. If he's talking about just how the camera's at like the regular heights when you're moving around the map, that was just, we actually did play around with higher and lower. The higher you get, the less it becomes very impersonal. Yeah, I guess to some degree. but the closer you get, obviously it becomes more personal, but you then lose track of, especially with that camera angle, you kind of, you don't have your bearings as much with the kind of the scale we were playing with. In regards to the cameras pulling out at certain points, I mean, that was just kind of like I wanted to do justice to the environment artists, the illustrators, of like, you've made some really cool artwork here. Let's pull the camera out and show it off. But also to give the sense of scale. In my Hakon, we do this a bunch where we have something we call a vista system.
I love the vistas.
Yeah, really you kind of see them at the beginning and the end of maps. Apart from Angren, that was a deliberate choice. You'll get this like really kind of cool vista shot, and it'll show you, it'll give you a sense of like, all right, this is what this place is. Yeah. But in Mahakam, we do it on like the sides of mountains and that. So later on in this mission, we do it a bunch where we really pull the camera out, and you get like kind of the background shifts as you're moving around. So really again, cool. It's really cool it's basically a 2D game, but not. So we get this depth. It's really cool.
In the first map in Lyria, when you're going through the tutorial, that's kind of the one things that when you go through that bend, you have the camera kind of pan out, and you get to see like the beautiful vista. And for me, that was something that also kind of showcased how beautiful the world is, and that it's hand drawn, and also that you get to see kind of the style of the place that you're exploring. So each map is distinctive. It has its own look, and different things are happening around it, like what you mentioned in the beginning. And also, as a player, you're able to experience that much better and kind of see like a bigger view of the whole thing.
There was an idea originally to have the vistas be kind of the same layout as the actual map, but that idea got shut down very, very quickly because it's incredibly hard to do that with a 2D location with a So we didn't do that.
Okay, moving on. Were there things that you wanted to add to Thronebreaker, but couldn't for various reasons? Not working properly, lack of time, didn't fit. This is by Slow the Dyslexic Owls. Interesting name.
Cool. What did I want to add? I wouldn't say that it's stuff I wanted to add. We definitely talked about potentially like having jumping, but not really jumping. Like if you could like drop down ledges and stuff, like that'd be. It sounds really simple. Of like you come to a ledge and you can drop down, but you can't climb back up. Just that really simple mechanic would have actually opened up a lot in regards to how levels would have been made. You could have done some really interesting kind of with the way backtracking is normally frowned upon when you're making levels, but doing interesting backtracking, there's something you could play with there. So yeah, that was an idea I think that was talked about very on. But again, it was kind of like a technical thing, and I think it just would have looked weird. Yeah.
Nice. Question, a lot of questions actually coming in for you. Do you have a favorite RPG or a favorite game? That doesn't have to be for inspiration reason, but are there any things that you yourself are kind of drawn to? And Ake just left us, which whenever Ake is gone, he talks about the good book of deeds and how people are supposed to behave. Like he's such an awesome character, but whenever this happens, it bumps me out.
I know he's a bit of an ass, to be fair. Bye Ake.
See ya. So favorite games.
Favorite games.
Or RPG, favorite RPG. You can sort of talk from a level designer perspective. I think that's what kind of people want to really get into, because they always like to see, like, for a person working on a specific area of a game, like what are they drawn to? And because they're drawn to it, most likely they're drawn to it because it's something that they work on and they feel like it's an example of good level design.
This is a tricky one. I don't normally do like, this is my favorite game, because honestly, like over time it changes. I have some favorites over the time, like Resident Evil 2.
Okay.
The OG game.
Nice, good choice.
And the remake, I guess, but the OG one, like one of my all-time favorite games for sure. Just from more of a nostalgia element and a game design perspective, not necessarily a level design perspective, just overall package. My favorite RPG. I really, really enjoyed Fallout 3.
Okay, good choice.
Really, really enjoyed Fallout 3.
Although people think that 3 not, but 2 is like 1 and 2. It depends on the person that you meet, right?
That one, I mean, going to tell a story here. I've never actually played Fallout 1 and 2. So, yeah, okay, I'll take that one on the chin. But in regards to the kind of the new Bethesda ones, let's say, Fallout 3, there was something about that world in regards to drawing the player around and having mystery. That the Capital Wasteland had a mystery to it. It's very mysterious, and kind of coming across even just like little in-jokes where you'd find a bunker and it'd be two skeletons with a text pad, and then like it's kind of a bit of a trope now. But the first time I saw that, I was like, it was like a man and a wife, and the kid had left or something. I was like, I'm just heartbroken. I was like, this is a bit of text. So that one stuck with me. Just level design stuff. I mean, I take a lot of influence from a lot of different games. To be fair, I wouldn't necessarily.
That's what really cool. Category. That's what is really cool about CD Projekt as a studio, and something that I've kind of seen throughout my years here is like everybody is a gamer. We all play games, and we all take inspiration from different games that we play. But we just like to play them, and we like to experience them. And I mean, if you work on the developer side like you do, you kind of get to see the nuts and bolts kind of get to experience that, through that way. And also something that Miles once said, which kind of stayed with me, is like, there are runs of the game that he does just for fun, and there are runs of games that he does just to look at the specific things. It was either Miles or Pavel Sasko, one of them. But I remember it kind of stuck to me. Like you get to see it from a different perspective than, for example, like me playing it from like a communications marketing perspective. I can critique how the game was marketed or how engagement with the community was done, but it's hard for me to experience it and kind of look into, they designed this in this way, or this was put here for a specific reason, or the way that the camera works here was done specifically for this, and that's really cool.
I take a lot of influence from. I actually had a holiday in Malta not too long ago, and there was. This is a bit weird tangent for a story, but there was like a rock beach area kind of thing. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but there was like these really small little pools of sand and grass. And like I was taking pictures of it, but there was no real sense of scale reference in them. And it could have arguably been something taken from a drone 300 meters above, right? So I took a lot of influence from just that rock pool, right? And that's not a game. That's just it's in real life twisted to be something else, I guess. Right?
Really cool. Two last questions because we'll be ending soon. How long did the development for Thronebreaker last? Do you remember how much time it was? Because you joined at the beginning of when we're working on development of the game. We're just starting the development for The Witcher Tales Thronebreaker. What was the time span? Do you remember?
I think so I joined in January. I forget which year. I joined in January, so it would probably have been about 21, 22 months, something like that, I guess.
Yeah.
It was I
think it was fairly quickly, to be honest. Like fairly quick development. I remember the team for Thronebreaker like grew very quickly, and it was kind of part of it was like a sub-team of the Gwent team. So we were all sat together in one place. And everybody was contributing to the project itself, and we were kind of moving people in between projects and this one. So it was really cool.
I'd say like Lyria took the longest. It was the most worked on map. There was many reasons for that. The other maps came online relatively quickly, as we went on. But it was probably nearly 2. I think it's just under 2 years.
All right. Last one, most important question. This was from Domi Dowie. This was, since Miles had to answer this question, you have to Trisser Yen.
I'm not doing that. I've already said it on Twitter. Team Gascon.
Team Gascon, okay. Yeah, easy. Oh yeah, you actually did tweet about it. So yeah, Team Gascon.
I knew that question would be asked.
Yeah,
so it's before anyone asked. Team
it's
Gascon.
Always there. All right, that is going to be it for everything that we have planned for this stream. Thank you everybody who joined in. We will be seeing you next week for the next one, which will be the penultimate one, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll be moving to the dystopian future of Cyberpunk 2077. And after that, we'll be doing Rogue Mage. So 2 interesting titles, 2 of the freshest titles when it comes to CD Projekt Red. So highly encourage you to check those out. Seb, or Sebastian, thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure. It's always great to talk to you. You're a very chill, humble dude, and yeah, I enjoy talking to you, man.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's good. Oh, I got to get one in.
Okay.
There was a guy who responded on Twitter to the announcement of this.
Yeah.
It's his birthday. He said, "Hey, it's my birthday on that day, so happy birthday to
happy
that person."
birthday to you!
Some random person on the internet. Good for you.
Yeah. Happy birthday. And yeah, thank you everybody who watched the stream. And yeah, catch you next week. Bye.